Hello everyone, I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast.
Today we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 11 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 2 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode does not contain any topics that need a warning, and thus, feel free to listen. Digressions are unknown at this point. It is up to the listener to determine their level of comfort based on past experiences. Stop listening if you feel dizzy or lightheaded. Consult your doctor should you experience any of these symptoms.
Our show is listener supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. We have a couple of additions this week before we get into the episode. Last week, we were discussing the concept that people who truly believe in something are capable of more than people who are nihilists, or at least have no strong set of beliefs that would drive a certain outcome. I had said that Corbollo Dom's soldiers don't have a foundational set of beliefs, but I realized later that it is probably not true. While many of them appear to be opportunists, a subset of them likely view themselves as freedom fighters and see their actions as an attempt to free their continent from the occupation of the Malazan Empire, the occupiers. What do you think about that?
I agree.
Okay, then this is settled. Would you like to add anything else?
So I agree with that. I think the other thing that I wondered about is if they're similar to the Ashok regiment and they feel slighted in some way, staying with Corbollo is a way that they could get revenge, potentially. If there's something that being part of the Malazan army, that one sergeant or that one captain who was like really getting into their caboose, and, this was an opportunity to take revenge on those people.
Revenge is a strong motivator, depending on a couple of things. Whatever the slight was, maybe if someone's really petty and they have an issue with their commanding officer, that's a pretty weak drive for revenge. Now, if you're a father and something happens to one of your children, God help the person that did anything to them.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They've made millions of movies. Charles Bronson, any Jason Statham movie in the last 15 years. Come on.
Well, I'm trying to think of what is Corbollo's motivator. I don't remember exactly, but I don't think it's that strong.
Power.
So it's kind of, to me, it sort of is in the same ilk of not being that great of a reason for wanting.
Yes. And I guess maybe to further that point, is it the goal is for the greater good, or it's more of a singular focus? If I'm being greedy, I want power for myself. That's different than people that have a unifying belief. We are serving a higher purpose, whatever that is.
Yes.
Whether it's freedom for our people, or it's a god, or it is an ideal.
So to that, I guess how some of these might, like you said, feel like they're freedom fighters. That could be that overarching sentiment that they're feeling. That I agree with completely.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's probably too nuanced to know exactly how everybody's feeling in there.
True.
And there's probably a mixed bag of all of them. Opportunists, revenge seekers, and people who maybe feel like they just have an opposite belief from the Malazan Empire. They feel like the Malazans are the colonizers and everything, and they're anti that.
Yes.
So
I agree with that.
Okay.
I just thought I had a blind spot when I was thinking about it originally. Like, I was coming at it from the perspective of the occupiers.
Yes.
Because I'm all in on the Malazan Empire.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
We had a little situation come up this weekend that I wanted to share with everybody. This is a callback to Billy and I talking about Mike Tyson fights back when Mike Tyson and Jake Paul had their fight. This past weekend, we had the Gina Carano and Ronda Rousey fight. Dane, do you want to tell them what happened?
Well, Gina lost in record time. Is that what you... And so,
yeah, but...
so because of that, Kamraun thought it would be a brilliant idea to go and feed the dog as soon as the fight starts, he didn't say anything and comes back and goes, "What, it's over?"
In my defense, Ronda Rousey was walking out as I went to go feed the dogs. I'm talking, this is like a minute and a half. I've expected some lead up to the beginning of the fight and everything, but it doesn't take me that long to feed the dogs.
I mean, it was an astounding turn of events. I don't think I expected the outcome to be any different than it was, but I thought there might be a little more resistance than about 15, 17 seconds of a fight.
Yeah.
So
this just reminded me of the story of Billy saying he was watching those Tyson's fights with his friends back in the day, and one of them would go off to the garage to get a beer right when it started, and he comes back, "What, it's over already?" He missed the whole fight.
Yeah, lesson learned. And that was pay-per-view in those days, so that was a real hit. You know, at least was freed and you weren't out any money, but I would say at the start of a fight, you probably just need to handle your business in between rounds. So let this be a harsh lesson for you, Kamraun.
I don't know how many more fights I'm going to watch, to be honest with you.
Next time there's a couple of ladies who are wanting to beat each other up, make sure you're glued to your seat. That's all.
Well, during that Jake Paul Tyson thing, there was a boxing match between two women. Was actually the best fight of the night, if I remember correctly.
Well, certainly better than Tyson and Paul.
Absolutely. In this case, I think it really showed that Gina was a stand-up fighter and didn't have a lot of ground game. And Ronda Rousey, her judo background is what really paid off there, because they get you to the ground and then go for those really quick arm bars. That's how she won.
Yeah. Well, in Gina's defense, I will say she's been out of the game 17 years. The game has probably changed a dramatic amount in that amount of time. And I agree. It was probably a lot more boxing heavy in the beginning of MMA than it was so heavy grappling. So you're right. Ronda definitely has an advantage there. And she looked like she was crazy strong compared to Gina.
Yeah. All right. Well, thought we'd share that fun little story with you from this past weekend.
Yep. Enjoy, I hope.
All right. Chapter 11, Part 2. We pick up immediately where we left off with Tavora's army on the march. The first day of travel was done, and to Gamut it seemed they had traveled a paltry, pathetic distance from Aaron. To be expected, of course. The army was a long way from finding its feet. Gamut thought, as am I. Saddle sore and lightheaded from the heat, the Fist watched from a slight rise alongside the line of march as the camp slowly took shape. Pockets of order amidst a chaotic sea of motion. Seti and Wiccan horse warriors continued to range well beyond the outlying pickets, far too few in number, however, to give him much comfort. He thought, and those Wiccans, grandfathers and grandmothers, one and all. Hood knows I might well have crossed blades with some of those old warriors. Those ancient ones, they were never settled with the idea of being in the Empire. They were here for another reason entirely, for the memory of Coltane. And the children, well, they were being fed the singular poison of bitter old fighters filled with tales of past glory. Gamut thought, and so, ones who've never known the terror of war, and ones who've forgotten. A dreadful pairing.
That's such a good line. Memory of the old, inexperience of the young, inheriting a version of war already warped by the old, seems very similar to Karsa and his grandfather Polk.
That's a great callback to the beginning of the book. I agree, it's a very similar situation, though in Polk's case, there was also a layer of stolen valor, claiming he did things that he didn't.
That's true.
I suspect these Wiccans were in fact actually in battle with the Malazans.
Yeah.
But furthering that point, I think about when Saving Private Ryan came out and the impact that it had on the actual soldiers that went to the theater that had endured going through the D-Day invasion. And for them, it was like it had just happened to them.
Okay.
So I don't think any of those people were under the illusion that going back into a situation like that was filled with glory. For them, it was a horrific thing that they went through. And I wonder if the role that people played when they contributed to any of these conflicts, if it was one that was less harrowing of an experience, maybe they're the ones that have the glory day view of it, whereas somebody that lost their squad in horrific ways, endured something that was that terrible, never forgets what that was like. And they don't want to talk about it. They're still haunted by it regularly. I wonder how that contributes to this situation.
Yeah. I've heard a handful of interviews from some of these older soldiers who were there. And I guess it varies. Everybody's got a different personality. And the way certain veterans talk about it is very different. Some of them recall those horrible stories, like you say. The boats hit the shore, the door opens on the ship, and they're getting blasted. And you're holding your best friend who's getting torn to pieces, essentially. Like you say, it's terrible for them. And then other people seem to kind of, I'm not sure if they relish it, but they talk about it a lot different. They're a lot more free in the way that they speak about it, and they seem less bothered by what was happening. So I guess person to person, it's always going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, individual psychology plays into it too.
Yeah.
I guess some people might have sociopathic tendencies and they're like loving it.
Maybe. Yeah.
They're all about it. They're like, that's where they belong. I don't know. Such a breadth of experience, I guess, amongst humanity.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Gamut stretched to ease the kinks in his spine, then forced himself into motion. Down from the ridge, along the edge of the rubble-filled ditch to where the adjunct's command tent sat, its canvas pristine, Timul's Wiccan standing guard around it. Timul was not in sight. Gamut pitied the lad. He was already fighting a half-dozen skirmishes without a blade drawn, and he was losing. He thought, and there's not a damn thing any of us can do about it. He approached the tent's entrance, scratched at the flap, and waited. From within, the adjunct called, "Come in, Gamut." Tavora was kneeling in the forechamber before a long stone box and was just settling the lid into place when he stepped through the entrance. A momentary glimpse, her Odotarl sword, then the lid was in place. She said, "There is some softened wax there in that pot over the brazier. Bring it over, Gamut." He did so and watched as she brushed the inset join between the lid and base until the container was entirely sealed. Then she rose and swept the wind-blown sand from her knees. Tavora muttered, "I am already weary of this pernicious sand." She studied him for a moment, then said, "There is watered wine behind you, Gamut. Pour yourself some." Gamut asked, "Do I look in need, adjunct?" Tavora replied, "You do. Ah, I well know you sought out a quiet life when you joined our household, and here I have dragged you into a war." Gamut felt himself bridling and stood straighter. He said, "I am equal to this, adjunct." Tavora said, "I believe you. Nonetheless, pour yourself some wine. We await news." Gamut swung about in search of the clay jug, found it, and strode over. He said, "News, adjunct?" She nodded, and he saw the concern on her plain features, a momentary revelation that he turned away from as he poured out a cup of wine. Gamut thought, "Show me no seams, lass. I need to hold on to my certainty." A sudden urgency in her tone, Tavora said, "Come stand beside me." He joined her. They faced the clear space in the center of the chamber, where a portal flowered, spreading outward like liquid staining a sheet of gauze, murky gray, sighing out a breath of stale, dead air. A tall, green-clad figure emerged. Strange, angular features, skin the shade of coal-dust marble. The man's broad mouth had the look of displaying a perpetual half-smile, but he was not smiling now.
What a cool way to describe a portal opening. Spreading out like water on a sheet of gauze. I guess I'd never thought about it like that in all the portals we've encountered so far.
Yeah, normally you think about it as like a tear opening.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the detail about the breath of stale air coming out from the Imperial Warren.
Mm-hmm.
How fitting given it's filled with naught but ashes.
Yeah.
I imagine it's like the breath in Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark when they open the tomb that has the Ark of the Covenant in it. Mm. There's like this huge gush of air that comes out of it, and it's obviously stale. It's been closed for thousands of years.
Yeah. Good pull.
Oh, thank you. The man paused to brush gray dust from his cloak and leggings, then lifted his head and met Tavora's gaze. He said, "Adjunct, greetings from the Empress, and myself, of course." Tavora replied, "Topper, I sense your mission here will be an unpleasant one. Fist Gamut, will you kindly pour out our guest some wine?" Gamut thought, "Gods below, the damned master of the claw." Then he said, "Of course." He glanced down at his cup, then offered it to Topper, saying, "I have yet to sip. Here." The tall man tilted his head in thanks and accepted the cup. Gamut went to where the jug waited. Tavora asked, "You have come directly from the Empress?" Topper said, "I have, and before that, from across the ocean, from Genebacus, where I spent a most glum evening in the company of High Mage Tashrin. Would it shock you to know that he and I got drunk that night?" Gamut's head turned at that. It seemed such an unlikely image in his mind that he was indeed shocked. The adjunct looked equally startled. Then she visibly steeled herself and asked, "What news have you to tell me?" Topper swallowed down a large mouthful of wine, then scowled. He said, "Watered. Ah well. Losses, adjunct, on Genebacus. Terrible losses."
Can you imagine what a gut punch this information is going to be? Tavora's army is already off to a bit of a rocky start with the Omen. I don't remember if there was a plan for either of those forces to join with the other. I think there was, but this news erases that possibility entirely.
Yeah, none to very little support coming, and that would be a blow.
Yeah.
A catastrophic one at that. And then not to mention the personal connection with Perrin.
Yeah.
At this section, I didn't remember exactly what she knew about Perrin, what details, whether she thought he's disappeared still or deserted. That's cleared up a little bit later in the section. We'll get to it.
Okay.
But information about her brother obviously is going to come as a shock as well. So It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Lying motionless in a grassy depression 30 paces beyond the squad's fire, Bottle closed his eyes. He could hear his name being called. Strings, who was called Fid by Gessler, wanted him, but the mage was not ready. Not yet. He had a different conversation to listen to, and managing that without being detected was no easy task. His grandmother back in Malice City would have been proud. She would say, "Never mind those damned Warrens, child. The deep magic is far older. Remember, seek out the roots and tendrils, the roots and tendrils. The paths through the ground, the invisible web woven from creature to creature. Every creature on the land, in the air, in the water, they are all linked. And it is within you, if you have been awakened, and spirits below, you've been awakened, child. Within you, then, to ride those tendrils." And ride them he did, though he would not surrender his private fascination with Warrens, with Mianus in particular. Illusions, playing with those tendrils, with those roots of being, twisting and tying them into deceptive knots that tricked the eye, the touch, that deceived every sense. Now that was a game worth playing. But for the moment, he had immersed himself in the old ways, the undetectable ways, if one was careful, that is, riding the life sparks of cape moths, of risen, of crickets and chigger fleas, of roving blood flies, mindless creatures dancing on the tent's wall, hearing but not comprehending the sound shivers of the words coming from the other side of that tent wall. Comprehension was Bottle's task, and so he listened. As the newcomer spoke, interrupted by neither the adjunct nor Fist Gamut, listened and comprehended.
Oh, ho, ho. Look at this little eavesdropper. And with a pretty dangerous individual to boot. Also, what an interesting talent Bottle has to be able to ride the consciousness of these creatures and be able to gain information from it. And it sounds like kind of weave it in with Mianus. I've always been curious about what this old magic is. I can't remember if we've seen this from any other magic users.
It sounds adjacent to the magic produced by Nil and Nether. Maybe not produced is the right word, but leveraged by Nil and Nether.
Okay.
A more primal sorcery that is connected to nature.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Because they always talk about it like in touch with their spirits and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Also, based on this description, it sounds like Bottle may be an adept. His grandma sure thinks so.
Yeah, he does. It seems uncommon for some of these mages to be able to be extremely capable with one. And similar to like Quick Ben, who's able to master multiple Warrens and kind of interweave them, it sounds like Bottle's doing the same thing with these. So, yeah, he might well be.
I also wonder at this point who he feels comfortable sharing the information he finds out while he's eavesdropping with.
Yeah.
So far, he's been pretty quiet, and the interactions that he's had, he's been kind of cagey, you know?
Right.
So there's also the component where the squad hasn't had any time to build any cohesion yet.
That's a good point.
So maybe he just doesn't trust anybody.
Yeah, true.
Strings glared down at the two seated mages. He said, "You can't sense him?" Balgrid's shrug was sheepish. He said, "He's out there, hiding in the dark somewhere." Tavos Pond added, "And he's up to something, but we can't tell what." Balgrid muttered, "It's strange." Strings snorted and strode back to Gessler and Borduk. The other squad members were brewing tea at the small fire they had built to one side of the path. Cuddle's snores were loud from the tent beyond. Strings said, "The bastard's vanished." Gessler grunted and said, "Maybe he's deserted, and if that's the case, the Wiccans will hunt him down and come back with his head on a spear." "There won't be." Someone shouted, "He's here!" They turned to see Bottle settling down by the fire. Strings stamped over, demanding, "Where in Hood's name have you been?"
This was pretty wild to me. He was, 30 paces away and still undetectable? I mean, that's very impressive.
I'm telling you, he's strong.
Yeah, he's got to be. When I first read it, I remember, I guess, overlooking that 30 paces. And I just kind of thought he was across the camp somewhere. But 30 paces outside the campfire. I mean, he's close as hell. And nobody knows he's there. That's really amazing.
He's like the stealth fighter of mages. He's able to mask himself. He's got a low signature. Bottle looked up, his brows slowly lifting as he said, "Nobody else felt it?" He glanced over at Balgrid and Tavos Pond, who were both approaching. Then he went on. "That portal? The one that opened in the adjunct's tent?" He frowned at the blank expressions on the faces of the other two mages. Then in a deadpan voice he asked, "Have you two mastered hiding pebbles yet? Making coins disappear?"
What an insult. It's understated, but it still cuts.
Yeah, it's amazing. But it shows how he's a level above these other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like the kid that's been playing soccer since he was 3 versus somebody that just started in high school or something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
It's a whole other level.
Yeah.
It's second nature to somebody. It's crazy.
I guess that's really what it is. Second nature to him. Like you say, I guess it feels like an adept. He just has a natural way with it. But that comment is just masterfully done. I love it.
Strings lowered himself opposite Bottle and asked, "What was all that about a portal?" Bottle replied, "Bad news, Sergeant. It all went foul on Genebacchus. Dujak's army mostly wiped out. The bridge burners annihilated. Whiskey Jack dead." Someone exclaimed, "Dead?" Another said, "Hood, take us." Yet another said, "Whiskey Jack, God's below."
Talk about ripping the Band-Aid off fast. Bottle isn't trying to break it lightly, is he? I really don't know how you could in that situation.
He doesn't know that Fiddler was a bridge burner, and he may have held back a little bit and eased the blow if he knew that, I think.
That's a good point. I guess with the new moniker, Strings, he is trying to hide what he was before, so he wouldn't even know.
And aside from that, it's news from the Empire that is relevant.
Yeah.
So I would think that they would want to know that. Soldiers, there's no easy way to they probably just prefer it straight.
Yeah.
Instead of some corporate BS.
Right. Mincing around it, don't actually
Let me
say
put it
it
in Chat GPT and just make it as flowery as possible. Spin it positive, actually. Actually,
this was good.
What this means
Empire.
for you is there's more munitions
Yeah.
and supplies for your army because the 10,000 people that we had on Genebacchus, 7,000 less now. So now they get to come to you instead.
Yeah. Also, some room for advancement within the ranks. So,
No, we're going to hire from outside for those roles. That's how you get that guy that was trying to get into Beridus to get a hold of Kindly. He's upset. He got passed over for promotion multiple times due to outside hiring practices. Yeah. And he's got an axe to grind with corporate leadership. So he's going to take matters into his own hands.
Oh, God.
He's going to do his own startup. He's going to be the CEO now.
He's on Kickstarter. He's funding it himself. Oh, Lord. That's good.
A lot of people in the trenches just want the straight news without any BS.
Yeah, I can appreciate it. Still, it's going to be hard to take it.
Yeah. The curses grew more elaborate, along with postulations of disbelief, but Strings no longer heard them. His mind was numb, as if a wildfire had ripped through his inner landscape, scorching the ground barren. He felt a heavy hand settle on his shoulder, and vaguely heard Gessler murmuring something, but after a moment he shook the man off, rose and walked into the darkness beyond the camp. He did not know how long or how far he walked. Each step was senseless, the world outside his body not reaching through to him, remaining beyond the withered oblivion of his mind. It was only when a sudden weakness took his legs that he sank down onto the wiry, colorless grasses. The sound of weeping coming from somewhere ahead, a sound of sheer despair that pierced through the fog and thrummed in his chest. He listened to the ragged cries, wincing to hear how they seemed to be torn from a constricted throat, like a dam finally sundered by a flood of grief. He shook himself, growing mindful once more of his surroundings. The ground beneath the thin skein of grasses was hard and warm beneath his knees. Insects buzzed and flitted through the dark. Only starlight illuminated the wastes stretching out to all sides. The encamped army was easily 1,000 or more paces behind him. Strings drew a deep breath, then rose. He walked slowly towards the sound of the weeping. A lad, lean, no, damn near scrawny, crouched down with arms wrapped about his knees, head sunk low. A single crow feather hung from a plain leather headband. A few paces beyond stood a mare, bearing a Wiccan saddle, a tattered vellum scroll hanging from the horn. The horse was placidly tugging at the grass, her reins dangling. Strings recognized the youth, though for the moment he could not recall his name. But Tavora had placed him in command of the Wiccans. After a long moment, the sergeant moved forward, making no effort to stay quiet, and sat down on a boulder a half-dozen paces from the lad. The Wiccan's head snapped up. Tear-streaked war paint made a twisted net of his narrow face. Venom flared in his dark eyes, and he hissed, a hand unsheathing his long knife as he staggered upright. Strings muttered, "Relax. I'm in Grief's arms this night myself, though likely for an entirely different reason. Neither of us expected company, but here we are." The Wiccan hesitated, then snapped the weapon back into its sheath and made to walk away. Strings said, "Hold a moment, horse warrior. There's no need to flee." The youth spun round, mouth twisting into a snarl. Strings continued, "Face me, I will be your witness this night, and we alone will know of it. Give me your words of sorrow, Wiccan, and I will listen. Hood knows it would serve me well right now." The young warrior rasped, "I flee no one." Strings said, "I know, I just wanted to get your attention." The lad asked, "Who are you?" Strings replied, "Nobody. and that is how I will stay if you like, nor will I ask for your name. The boy cut in, I am Timul. String said, ah, well, so your bravery puts me in my place. My name is Fiddler.
I found it interesting that he gives him Fiddler and not Strings in this situation.
I suspect he did this because it's a time for unloading their burdens, and he wanted to start with something truthful to earn his trust.
That's a good point. Yeah. I wonder if Timul knows who Fiddler is. Maybe he's another one. Like Fiddler's seen him. Maybe Timul has just seen him. He's nobody, so.
Doubtful. I think he's just a sergeant among many, to be honest with you. Timul's probably just tied up in his own stuff.
Okay.
Well, I say that. It depends on if Timul was there when Fiddler and Cuddle did their little custard deal to knock everybody down.
Everybody was supposed to be there. Or was it just the Marines?
Since he's supposed to be guarding Tavora, maybe they were there. But that was only Gamut's company because it wasn't the whole army, right? It was just Gamut's that was there.
Okay.
So it wasn't clear. I don't think it was stated that Timul was there, but maybe you can assume because they're guarding her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, though, I guess that does make the most sense. Start off on the right footing instead of with a lie if you're trying to ease your grieving and stuff.
Timul wiped angrily at his face, then his voice was suddenly harsh as he said, tell me, did you think my grief a noble thing? Did I weep for Coltane, for my fallen kin? I did not. My pity was for myself, and now you may go. Proclaim me. I am done with commanding, for I cannot command myself. Fiddler said, easy there. I have no intention of proclaiming anything, Timul, but I can guess at your reasons. Those wrinkled Wiccans of the Crow is my guess. Them and the survivors who walked off Gessler's ship of wounded. They won't accept you as their leader, will they? And so, like children, they blunt you at every turn, defy you, displaying a mocking regard to your face, then whispering behind your back. And where does that leave you? You can't challenge them all, after all. Timul exclaimed, perhaps I can. I shall. Fiddler said, well, that will please them no end. Numbers alone will defeat your martial prowess. So you will die, sooner or later, and they will win. Timul said, you tell me nothing I do not know, Fiddler. Fiddler said, I know. I'm just reminding you that you've good reason to rail at the injustice, at the stupidity of those you would lead. I had a commander once, Timul, who was faced with the same thing you're facing. He was in charge of a bunch of children, nasty children at that. Timul asked, and what did he do? Fiddler replied, not much, and ended up with a knife in his back. There was a moment of silence, then Timul barked a laugh. He's talking about Perrin here, isn't he?
He is. And I thought that was very interesting that he pulled that from his memory to give Timul something to sort of resonate with.
You know, originally I had thought he was talking about Whiskey Jack because the death of Whiskey Jack, the news of it is so recent, but it's so obvious now.
Yeah.
that he's talking about Perrin.
Yeah.
But the situation's the same. Bunch of grizzled old veterans not accepting a new commander. Makes total sense now.
Also interesting when Timul was talking to Tavora with Nil and Nether. And she had asked him plainly, do you think that they'll have a problem with you leading them? And he was like, no. It's not playing out the way he expected, I guess. That's a shame.
Fiddler nodded and said, I'm not one for stories with lessons in life, Timul. My mind bends to more practical choices. Timul asked, such as? Fiddler said, well, I would imagine that the adjunct shares your frustration. She wants you to lead and would help you do so, but not so you lose face. She's too clever for that. No, the key here is deflection. Tell me, where are their horses right now? Timul frowned and said, their horses? Fiddler said, I would think the Seti outriders could do without the Crow clan for a day, don't you think? I'm sure the adjunct would agree. Those Seti are young, by and large, and untested. They need the room to find themselves. There's good reason, then, militarily, to keep the Wiccans from their horses come tomorrow. Let them walk with the rest of us, barring your loyal retinue, of course. And who knows, a day might not be enough. Could end up being 3 or even 4. Timul spoke softly. To get to their horses, we would need to be quiet. Fiddler said, another challenge for the Seti, or so I'm sure the adjunct would note. If children your kin must be, then take away their favored playthings, their horses. Hard to look tall and imperious when you're spitting dust behind a wagon. In any case, you'd best hurry so as not to awaken the adjunct. Timul said, she may already be asleep. Fiddler said, no, she isn't, Timul. I am certain of it. Now, before you leave, answer me a question, please. You've a scroll hanging from your mare's saddle. Why? What is written on it? Turning to the animal, Timul answered, the horse belonged to Duiker. He was a man who knew how to read and write. I rode with him, Fiddler. He spun back with a glare and snapped, I rode with him. Fiddler said, and the scroll? The young Wiccan waved a hand as he said, men such as Duiker carried such things. Indeed, I believe it once belonged to him, was once in his very hands. Fiddler asked, and the feather you wear, to honor Coltane? Timul said, to honor Coltane, yes. But that is because I must. Coltane did what he was expected to do. He did nothing that was beyond his abilities. I honor him, yes, but Duiker was different. He scowled and shook his head. Timul continued. He was old, older than you, yet he fought, when fighting was not even expected of him. I know this to be true, for I knew Coltane and Bolt, and I heard them speak of it, of the historian. I was there when Coltane drew the others together, all but Duiker. Lull, Bolt, Chenid, Mincer, and all spoke true and with certainty. Duiker would lead the refugees. Coltane even gave him the stone the traders brought. Fiddler asked, the stone? What stone? Timul replied, to wear about his neck. A saving stone, Nil called it. A soul trapper, delivered from afar. Duiker wore it, though he liked it not, for it was meant for Coltane, so that he would not be lost. Of course, we Wiccans knew he would not be lost. We knew the crows would come for his soul. The elders who have come, who hound me so, they speak of a child born to the tribe. A child once empty, then filled, for the crows came. They came. Fiddler asked, Coltane has been reborn? Timul said, he has been reborn. Fiddler muttered, and Duiker's body disappeared from the tree. Timul insisted, yes, and so I keep his horse for him, for when he returns. I rode with him, Fiddler. Fiddler said, and he looked to you and your handful of warriors to guard the refugees. To you, Timul, not just Nil and Nether. Timul's dark eyes hardened as he studied Fiddler, then he nodded and said, I go now to the adjunct. Fiddler said, the ladies pull on you, Commander. Timul hesitated, then said, this night, you saw. Fiddler replied, I saw nothing. A sharp nod, then the lad was swinging onto the mare, the reins in one long-fingered, knife-scarred hand. Fiddler watched him ride into the darkness. He sat motionless on the boulder for a time, then slowly lowered his head into his hands. What a guy. He sets aside his own grief to help someone who was suffering. True leadership right there.
Yeah. This is one of those things that earlier Fiddler had mentioned. You don't want a sapper as a sergeant or anything like that, but he is showing that he's extremely capable in all of this, being able to read his squad, read this kid who he only just met, kind of knows how to assess the situation. And he's done this a couple times with the Omen. Quick thinking, he was already trying to spin it a way that wasn't going to mess everything up. He's really a capable individual.
To quote Kellanved, with soldiers like these, it's no wonder the Malazans conquered all the territory that they did. You
Indeed.
know, just paraphrasing, but...
Yeah. Do we remember what was written on that little piece of parchment? Was it just the name of that woman soldier that he encountered?
This isn't the same parchment.
This isn't that.
Duiker has that parchment in Darujistan.
With him.
Because he was holding it at the end of Memories of Ice.
Okay.
This parchment, I'm not exactly sure what's written on it.
Okay. All right. I think it's also interesting that Timul has such reverence for Duiker. I think that's very interesting.
He impressed everybody he interacted with.
Yeah.
Duiker, he didn't value himself that much. He didn't see himself as anything special, but he's another one of these pivotal characters like Fiddler, where they make a huge difference to those around them.
Even when they don't value their actions as highly, but everybody around them values them greatly, it seems.
Yeah. Back in Tavora's tent, the three were seated now in the lantern glow of the tent's chamber. Topper's tale was done, and it seemed that all that remained was silence. Gamut stared down at his cup, saw that it was empty, and reached for the jug, only to find that it, too, was empty. Even as exhaustion tugged at him, Gamut knew he would not leave, not yet. Tavora had been told of, first, her brother's heroism, then his death. He thought, not a single bridge burner left alive. Tayshran himself saw their bodies, witnessed their interment in Moonspawn. But last, Ganoas redeemed himself, redeemed the family name. He did that much at least. But that was where the knife probably dug deepest. She had made harrowing sacrifices, after all, to resurrect the family's honor. Yet all along, Ganoas was no renegade, nor had he been responsible for Lorne's death. Like Dujek, like Whiskey Jack, his outlawry was nothing but a deception. There had been no dishonor. Thus, the sacrifice of young Felicin might have, in the end, proved unnecessary. Man, this would be a big punch in the gut. Your brother was alive this whole time, doing the right thing. You sacrifice your family for a ruse? How do you process that?
This is rough. Real rough. And it's interesting that the Empress, guess she would have to, but even somebody like the adjunct you would think would be a pretty close advisor to the Empress, that you can't even tell that one person, like, hey, your brother's going to be outlawed, but between you and I, it's not really what's going on. I guess to keep the whole thing rolling, she felt that was necessary, but I don't know how you process this. Especially when you think about it exactly as Gamut is thinking about here. You sacrificed your sister and did all this stuff all for nothing, for no real reason. That's terrible.
I don't know that the Empress could have disclosed this because the parents, I think the dad died of sadness, or he took it very poorly. What happened with Gano is I think he fell ill after that. And then the mom was kind of attached to the hip to the dad. Let's say the Empress had told Tavora, okay, hey, just so you know, your brother isn't actually an outlaw. He's doing the right thing. It's just we can't tell anybody. Then the parents would have to know. And then you think the rest of the nobles are going to just let them maintain their status when privately you know that Perrin isn't outlawed. But then what happens to House of Perrin? You know what I mean? Like they're going to take a hit to their social standing regardless.
Yeah.
And to even further that, if the Empress, for whatever reason, felt that Tavora was one of the few, if only, options she had as a new adjunct, it benefits the Empress to force her down this path. Because if Tavora has to prove herself for her loyalty, she's going to do things that she wouldn't do otherwise.
Yeah, that's a good point. The test.
Yeah, but then beyond that, how do you maintain loyalty after this?
Yeah, well, I guess, again, we still don't know the full extent of Tavora's psyche, her mental state, what she's capable of, how close to her vest she can keep things and all that. So I guess this is an ultimate test. This isn't just like run an obstacle course or something. This is like heavy duty stuff.
There's principalities involved.
Yeah.
And there was more. Jarring revelations. It had, Topper explained, been the hope of the Empress to land One-Arm's host on the north coast, in time to deliver a double blow to the army of the apocalypse. Indeed, the expectation all along had been for Dujek to assume overall command. Gamut could understand Lassine's thinking. To place the fate of the Imperial presence on 7 cities in the hands of a new, young, and untested adjunct was far too long a reach of faith.
So that 100%, I guess, answers the question from earlier. There was, in fact, a plan to have the 2 armies join up at some point.
Yep, and now a much diminished force at that. A broken one, too.
Yeah, that makes you wonder, similar to Tavora's army here, their feelings leaving Aaron, where they were all broken and everything, whatever's left from Dujek's company, is probably going to be much the same situation. Really challenging place to try and continue on from.
Yeah, just to refresh everyone's memory, though they probably haven't forgotten, in Memories of Ice, the army was shocked when Whiskey Jack was cut down by Calor, and they were all lined up there like their heart had been broken, and they had to go into battle after that. So their spirit was broken then, and then they lost a ton.
Yeah. On top of that. Yeah.
And then the loss of Dujek's forces that were being flown in, they lost a full wing of Moranth to those filthy, dirty condors. Foul beasts.
Yeah, that was a rough battle for them.
Yeah. And then the losses inside the city. Yeah. So, I mean, you compound all that stuff together, and it is a thoroughly broken force.
Yeah.
Whiskey Jack was the heart of the force, after all. They tied so much to him.
It's really interesting how impactful he was for the entire army. And Dujek is the fist and all that, but Whiskey Jack was the heart. Good point.
One thing that I brought up earlier that was cleared up here is Tavora did not know about the ruse with Perrin. And so I don't know how she processes this. We'll see.
Yep.
Gamut thought, though, Tavora had believed the Empress had done just that. And this was in relation to giving her control of the army here to fight the army of the apocalypse. Now, to find this measure of confidence so lacking, gods, this had been a hood-damned night indeed. Dujek One-Arm was still coming, with a scant 3,000 remaining in his host, but he would arrive late, and, by both Topper's and Tashrin's unforgiving assessments, the man's spirit was broken by the death of his oldest friend. Gamut wondered what else had happened in that distant land, in that nightmarish empire called the Panyon. Was it worth it, Empress? Was it worth the devastating loss? Topper had said too much, Gamut decided. Details of Lassine's plans should have been filtered through a more circumspect, less emotionally damaged agent. If the truth was so important, after all, then it should have been laid out for the adjunct long before now, when it actually mattered. To tell Tavora that the Empress had no confidence in her, then follow that with the brutal assertion that she was now the Empire's last hope for 7 cities. Well, few were the men or women who would not be rocked to their knees by that.
To keep drilling down on all this, it all adds to the mystery of Tavora. Will she be up to the challenge? Will she crumble? Again, we still don't know that much about her. She's very cagey. But we talked about this previously, and I guess these are the moments where she can really show her mettle.
Looking forward to seeing how she handles this. The adjunct's expression revealed nothing. She cleared her throat and said, "Very well, Topper. Is there more?" The Clawmaster's oddly shaped eyes widened momentarily. Then he shook his head and rose. He said, "No. Do you wish me to convey a message to the Empress?" Tavor frowned and said, "A message? No, there is no message. We have begun our march to the Holy Desert. Nothing more need be said." Gamut saw Topper hesitate. Then the Clawmaster said, "There is one more thing, Adjunct. There are probably worshippers of Fener among your army. I do not think the truth of the gods' fall can be hidden. It seems the Tiger of Summer is the Lord of War now. It does an army little good to mourn. Indeed, grief is anathema to an army, as we all well know. There may prove some period of difficult adjustment. It would be well to anticipate and prepare for desertions." Flat assertion in her voice silenced Topper as Tavora said, "There will be no desertions. The portal is weakening, Clawmaster. Even a box of basalt cannot entirely block the effects of my sword. If you would leave this night, I suggest you do so now." Topper stared down at her. He said, "We are badly hurt, Adjunct, and hurting. It is the hope of the Empress that you will exercise due caution and make no precipitous actions. Suffer no distraction on your march to Ruraku. There will be attempts to draw you from the trail, to wear you down with skirmishes and pursuits." Sudden iron in her tone, Tavora said, "You are a Clawmaster. Dujek's advice I will listen to, for he is a soldier, a commander. Until such time as he arrives, I shall follow my own instincts. If the Empress is dissatisfied, she is welcome to replace me. Now, that is all. Goodbye, Topper." Scowling, the Clawmaster swung about and strode without ceremony into the Imperial Warren. The gate collapsed behind him, leaving only a sour smell of dust.
Topper isn't wrong, I think, and I'm a little surprised how she took his advices.
Maybe he gave her the wrong advices.
One of your favorites. I feel like he was more stating a matter of obvious fact, kind of reaffirming what they should already know.
I kind of see Tavora's point here. Maybe she's already thought of this and Topper is simply stating the obvious. There may have been a better way for her to take the advice, though. Her response was a bit harsh. So I do wonder at their relationship.
You know, though, I'm just now thinking, I guess with what has just happened and this information revealed that the Empress did not have any real faith in her. And now Topper is kind of, maybe you should do this. And maybe she's kind of bristling a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me. You don't have any confidence in me? I'll show you. You know, maybe she's fearing a little bit of that.
Yeah. And Topper doesn't have the best reputation. People don't tend to like him.
That's true.
The Claw aren't popular.
Mm-hmm. She was a noble, so she would have been more aligned with the Talon and not the Claw, potentially.
I think the Talon are a means to the end for them. I don't know about the alignment thing. It's more of, this is just an opposing force we can pay to deal with whatever the Claw are trying to do in our midst.
Okay.
Gamut let out a long sigh, pushed himself gingerly from the rickety camp chair. He said, "You have my sorrow, Adjunct, on the loss of your brother." Tavora said, "Thank you, Gamut. Now, get some sleep, and stop by," Gamut cut in, "to Amber's tent. I, Adjunct." Tavora quirked an eyebrow and asked, "Is that disapproval I hear?" Gamut replied, "It is. I'm not the only one in need of sleep. Hood, take us. We've not even eaten this night." Tavora said, "Until tomorrow, Fist." He nodded and said, "Aye. Good night, Adjunct." There was but one figure seated at the ebbing fire when Strings returned. Strings said, "What are you doing up, Cuddle?" Cuddle said, "I've done my sleep. You'll be dragging your feet tomorrow, Sergeant." Sitting down cross-legged opposite the burly sapper, Strings muttered, "I don't think rest will come to me this night." Tossing a last scrap of dung onto the flames, Cuddle rumbled, "It's all far away." Strings said, "But it feels close." Cuddle said, "At least you're not walking in the footprints of your fallen companions, Fiddler, but even so, it's all far away." Strings said, "Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I'll take your word for it." Cuddle said, "Thanks for the munitions, by the way." Strings grunted, then said, "It's the damnedest thing, Cuddle. We always find more, and they're meant to be used, but instead we hoard them, tell no one we have them, in case they order us to put them to use." Cuddle said, "The bastards." Strings nodded in agreement and said, "Aye, the bastards." Cuddle avowed, "I'll use the ones you've given me, once I've crawled under Corbolo Dom's feet. I don't mind going to Hood at the same time, either." Strings said, "Something tells me that's what Hedge did in his last moment. He always threw them too close. That man had so many pieces of clay in him you could have made a row of pots from his insides." He slowly shook his head, eyes on the dying fire, and continued, "I wish I could have been there, that's all. Whiskey Jack, Trots, Mallet, Picker, Quick Ben." I'm going to pause here for just a second. I hadn't thought of this when I read through it. Hedge throwing them too close. It reminds me of when the bridge burners were coming up to Kapustan, and they put the cussers timed behind them to blow up, and then all of the Teniscari in front of them started waking up. You remember that? And he threw the cusser in front of them. So they got a double whammy of the cussers they had already set on a timer behind them. But then he hand threw the cusser in front of him. And it was from Perrin's perspective. And he got the womp womp. Just the hips of that one Teniscari landed next to him.
Ugh.
Evidence that he throws stuff too close. I mean, granted, I guess he didn't think he had an option at that point. He had to clear a path for them. But still.
That's a good memory there, Kamraun. I had not remembered that incident.
That scene has imprinted itself on me because it's one of the first scenes where you actually see what a cusser does to people. But then separately, the hips really...
Yeah, that leaves an image, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then Trotz grabs him and is throttling him because it's so close.
Yeah.
Cuddle said, "Quick's not dead. There was more after you'd left. I heard from my tent. Tayshrins made your wizard a high mage." Strings said, "Well, that doesn't surprise me, actually, that he'd survived somehow. I wonder if Perrin was still the company's captain." Cuddle replied, "He was. Died with them." String said, "The adjunct's brother. I wonder if she grieves this night." Cuddle said, "Wondering's a waste of time, Fiddler. We got lads and lasses that need taking care of, right here. Corbolo Dom's warriors know how to fight. My guess is we'll get whipped and sent back with our tails between our legs, and it'll be another chain as we stagger back to Aaron. Only this time we won't get even close." String said, "Well, that's a cheering prediction, Cuddle." Cuddle said, "It don't matter, so long as I kill that nappin' traitor, and his mage too, if possible." Strings asked, "And what if you can't get close?" Cuddle replied, "Then I take as many of them with me as I can. I ain't walking back, Fid, not again." Strings said, "I'll remember that if the moment arrives. But what about taking care of these recruits of ours, Cuddle?" Cuddle said, "Well, that's the walk, isn't it? This march. We deliver them to that battle. We do that much, if we can. Then we see what kind of iron they're holding." Strings smiled and said, "Iron. It's been a long time since I last heard that saying. Since we're looking for revenge, you'll want it hot, I expect." Cuddle said, "You expect wrong. Look at Tavora. There won't be any heat from her. In that, she's just like Coltane. It's obvious, Fiddler. The iron needs to be cold. Cold. We get it cold enough, who knows, we might earn ourselves a name." Strings reached across the fire, tapped the fingerbone hanging from Cuddle's belt, and said, "We've made a start, I think." Cuddle said, "We might have at that, Sergeant. Them and the standards. A start. She knows what's in her, give her that. She knows what's in her." String said, "And it's for us to bring it out into view." Cuddle said, "Aye, Fid, it is at that. Now go away. These are the hours I spend alone." Nodding, Strings climbed to his feet and said, "Seems I might be able to sleep after all." Cuddle said, "It's my scintillating conversation what's done you in." Strings replied, "So it was." As Strings made his way to his small tent, something of Cuddle's words came back to him. He thought, iron. Cold iron. Yes, it's in her. And now I'd better search, and search hard, to find it in me. And thus the chapter ends, and the book ends. We're officially halfway through the book. From a chapter perspective, I don't know if word count perspective, we're halfway through the book.
Yeah, maybe not word count. I think it was on Kindle. I saw that it was 50%. So
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Confirmed, halfway through the book.
Yeah, there we go.
For standout moments.
The unbelievable bad news that Topper delivered to Tavora. This army is already being challenged, and not a single sword has been drawn yet. A lot of these soldiers still grieving from the loss of Coltane, as well as just the harrowing journey of the chain of dogs. They have this omen. Fiddler and company are trying to turn that. You get some Wiccan reinforcements. That seems to boost morale temporarily, and now you get hit with this blow. How do you keep it together? I mean, imagine you're Tavora. What do you do? It's hard to imagine.
Endure. She's performing admirably, in my view, thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. You keep it together emotionally. You don't worry too much about the things that are outside your sphere of influence. The best you can do is the most you can do.
I mean, it's a good point. The last thing we would want to see is her to fall to pieces. I guess then the army's as good as done. If your commander has fallen apart, what chance does the rest of the army have?
Yeah. There is an additional layer to that, though. The best you can do may not be as high of a level as the best that somebody else can do. So you could do the best you can and still lose, but you can only put in your best level. And outside of that, it's out of your control.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, I can't remember the quote from The Rock. Second best.
Hold on. You're best.
Losers do their best.
Oh, R.I.P. Sean Connery.
Won't do the rest of
it's
it.
Great.
But yeah.
Oh.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was good. Kamraun. I really like Bottle. He is a little enigma. And as I said before, I always want to know more about this old magic he's using, how he was undetectable by the other squad mages, riding the consciousness of these insects. It's so unique and different from all the other magic we see. And as you said, probably more in line with the spirit magics that the Wiccan warlocks were using, something not tied to the standard Warrens, and I really love that.
Yes, I like seeing these different styles of sorcery. It's very creative and reminds us that there isn't a single way that this stuff manifests in the universe. So far, Bottle seems cagey, a lot like Quick Ben, and his powers seem to be much more advanced over the other mages in his cohort.
Yeah, that's good. I agree.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing more of his capabilities.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the way Fiddler set aside his own grief to help Timul. It's so impressive from a leader to do something like that.
Yeah, I agree. That was very touching from him. Didn't have to do that. Could have railroaded it, talk about himself, or ignore him completely. But you're right, the way he handled it, I thought was very good.
And then the way Tavora took the wave of bad news like a champ, at least the part that we witnessed. Who knows what happens whenever her and Tamber get together later. But
yeah,
at least in front of Gamut and Topper, she kept it together. So it's good to see that.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of the opposite side of what we saw Gamut and Blistig, where Blistig was bridling over and showing in front of everybody. And you had commented about how that was probably bad to let the rest of his soldiers see that happen instead of being able to contain it. She's at least doing the containment part, not in front of anybody else.
Yep.
I also enjoyed this talk about hot iron versus cold iron and what that could mean for these soldiers. And I think I can understand the cold iron. I kind of picture it like something non-reactive, but still solid under pressure. So I see what Cuddle is talking about with regard to Devora and Coltane. What do you think hot iron would be like? I'm kind of imagining maybe somebody like Corbolo Dom.
From a characteristic perspective, as someone who gets bloodlusted and loses control of their decision-making during battle, Corbolo's probably the closest thing we've seen. Possibly the Panyan Seer at the end when he was completely losing his ability to make decisions that actually manifested in good outcomes. But we've only seen hot iron on an individual basis so far. Karsa, when he got to Silver Lake, is probably the other closest thing I can think of where you probably needed to reevaluate your plan at that point in time.
He didn't change up at all, did he?
He didn't change up at all. Now, this was an attack planned by him, so it's not like a reacting to any other event, but he seemed bloodlusted and his decision-making was not the best and got his friends killed.
Yeah. R.I.P. by Rothendel.
R.I.P. All right, great job today, Dane.
Thank you, Kamraun. Good job yourself.
Thank you. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Just to double down, I guess, on this cold iron business and how we're talking about Tavora and her emotional state and everything. And then the interesting little bit that Cuddle drops about we get that iron cold enough and we might just earn ourselves a name. I think that's very interesting, earning a name as a company instead of just being the 14th and then getting named. It's interesting how the soldiers are thinking about this. And it just excites me from here to see where the army is going to go and how they're going to react to all this bad news and if they're going to be able to hold it together and do something great. So I'm just excited to see how this is going to pan out.
I agree. The cold iron is an interesting concept, and when manifested in an entire army, that's those legendary bridge burner type armies.
Right. Like you said, instead of just the individual, the whole company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.